Everything exploded in a way nobody saw coming. One whisper turned into a scream, one name shattered an entire illusion, and now the internet is watching a slow-motion implosion that feels too shocking to be real. This isn't just gossip. This isn't just drama. This is the kind of revelation that makes people slam their phones down and say, "There's no way this is true," before immediately picking it back up to hear more. Because when Candace Owens finally spoke, she didn't tease. She didn't dance around it. She dropped a verbal grenade straight into the middle of a carefully curated public image, and walked away while everything caught fire. According to what's now being framed as a fictionalized dramatization inspired by online speculation, Candace claimed that Charlie Kirk had secretly ordered DNA tests on his own children. Not once. Not twice. Multiple times. Through different labs. Under different names. As if he was running covert ops against his own life. And the alleged results. So explosive that people around him supposedly begged him to make them disappear before anyone else saw them. But the most terrifying part isn't the tests themselves. It's why he allegedly took them in the first place. Because this wasn't curiosity. This wasn't paranoia. This was fear. Deep, shaking, world-ending fear. Sources inside this dramatized narrative claim the moment those results came back, something in him snapped. Phones were thrown. Doors were locked. Voices were lowered. And suddenly, a man who preached certainty looked like someone who didn't know who to trust, who to believe, or what was real anymore. Candace didn't just hint at this. She described reactions. She described breakdowns. She described a silence so heavy it felt like a confession. And here's the hook that changes everything. What she revealed may only be the surface. Because buried beneath the DNA scandal is another secret, one so dangerous that even mentioning it could trigger the next explosion. And once you hear what that secret is, there's no turning back. Before anyone ever said the words DNA test out loud, the fracture was already there. In this fictionalized, dramatized account inspired by online speculation, people close to the situation say the tension didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in quietly, disguising itself as stress, as exhaustion, as the weight of public life pressing down too hard. Charlie still smiled in public, still delivered speeches with confidence, still played the role everyone expected. But behind closed doors, something had shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Laughter felt forced. And the silence lingered longer than it should have. Insiders claim it began with questions that had no obvious reason to exist. Innocent on the surface. Dangerous underneath. Questions about dates. About old trips. About timelines that suddenly mattered more than they ever had before. According to this dramatized narrative, Charlie became obsessed with details most people forget. He scrolled through years of photos late at night, zooming in, zooming out, staring at faces like they might confess something if he looked hard enough. He compared childhood pictures the way investigators compare evidence, not like a father reminiscing, but like a man searching for proof he was afraid to find. People noticed the change. They said his energy felt sharp, brittle, like glass under pressure. He started taking calls outside, pacing alone in parking lots, lowering his voice even when no one was around. He locked devices. Changed passwords. Deleted messages. He wasn't hiding from critics. He was hiding from his own thoughts. And then came the comment that allegedly lit the fuse. A joke. A careless remark made in public. Someone laughing about how one of the kids didn't look like him at all. Everyone else laughed and moved on. Charlie didn't. That sentence followed him home. Followed him into bed. Followed him every time he looked at his family. According to the dramatized account, that's when fear stopped being abstract and became physical. Tight chest. Shaking hands. Sleepless nights. He tried to rationalize it. Genetics are weird. Kids resemble different relatives. Everyone says dumb things. But doubt doesn't need logic to survive. It only needs repetition. And once it took root, it spread fast. He began quietly asking questions to people who didn't know they were being questioned. He revisited old conversations with new suspicion. He replayed moments that once felt harmless and now felt loaded. The first call to a private lab wasn't dramatic. It was clinical. Detached. Almost rehearsed. He didn't use his real name. He didn't give real contact information. He asked about discretion before he asked about accuracy. According to sources within this fictionalized storyline, he was told these labs handled sensitive clients. That no records would surface. That answers would be delivered quietly. That was all he needed. The first sample went out in unmarked packaging. Dropped off nowhere near his home. No witnesses. No trail. And then he waited. Waiting was the worst part. Every notification felt like a threat. Every silence felt louder than noise. He reportedly grew irritable, distracted, emotionally absent. His family felt it. They asked what was wrong. He said work. He said pressure. He said nothing at all. When the first result came back, it didn't bring relief. It brought panic. According to the narrative Candace later hinted at, the result wasn't clear enough. Not definitive. Just ambiguous enough to terrify him. Enough to convince him something was wrong, but not enough to explain what. So he ordered another test. Then another. Different labs. Different aliases. Different routes. It stopped being about truth and started being about confirmation. He needed the fear to either disappear completely or become undeniable. Anything was better than uncertainty. And each envelope that arrived made him worse. His behavior changed in ways people couldn't ignore. He avoided one child more than the others. Then overcorrected. Too much affection. Too much attention. Like he was trying to convince himself of something he no longer believed. This is where Candace enters the dramatized story, not as an antagonist, not as a hero, but as a witness who noticed the cracks before anyone else dared to name them. She saw the cancellations. The missed calls. The way Charlie stopped confiding. She heard fragments from people who didn't realize they were talking. She sensed something was wrong long before she knew what it was. And according to this narrative, she didn't confront him immediately. She waited. Because whatever he was hiding, it was heavy enough to bend him. The breaking moment came quietly. Backstage at an event. Bright lights. Smiling faces. Cameras everywhere. And Charlie looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His hands trembled. His responses lagged. Candace asked a simple question. "Are you okay?" He hesitated. That hesitation said everything. He didn't explain. He didn't deny. He just said, "If this gets out, everything falls apart." And in that instant, Candace knew this wasn't about politics. It wasn't about business. It was about something deeply personal and deeply explosive. What Candace didn't know yet, according to the fictionalized account, was that Charlie had already received the result that broke him. The final test. The one he trusted. The one he believed would end the nightmare. When he opened it, the language was cold. Numbers. Percentages. Clinical phrasing with no mercy. And one line that erased years of certainty. And while he was spiraling privately, Candace was closing in publicly. According to this dramatized storyline, she noticed the shift immediately. Charlie wasn't just withdrawn anymore. He was afraid. The kind of fear that doesn't come from criticism, but from exposure. When she pressed him again, gently at first, then more directly, he deflected. He minimized. He tried to control the narrative before it even existed. And that was the moment Candace stopped trusting his silence. She didn't confront him head-on. Not yet. She did what she always does in this fictionalized version. She listened. She watched. She let other people talk. Staffers. Acquaintances. People who thought they were venting, not leaking. She heard about strange packages arriving and disappearing. About labs that weren't supposed to exist. About aliases that didn't make sense. And slowly, a picture formed that was darker than she expected. When Candace finally went public, even she didn't anticipate the reaction. The internet didn't debate. It detonated. Clips of her comments spread faster than anyone could track. People replayed her words frame by frame, analyzing pauses, inflections, micro-expressions. They weren't asking if she was lying. They were asking how much she wasn't saying. Hashtags exploded. Fan accounts melted down. Critics sharpened knives. Supporters demanded proof. And in the chaos, fake leaks flooded the timeline, so fast they blurred the line between fiction and fact. Then came the burner accounts. Fresh profiles. No history. No followers. Dropping insider details with terrifying confidence. Some were obvious fakes. Some were too specific to ignore. Screenshots of alleged messages. Claims of private confrontations. One account posted a blurred document that looked just real enough to feel dangerous. The caption read, "This is only one result." And suddenly, the story mutated again. Because if there was more than one test, more than one child, more than one result, then the implications were catastrophic. Side-by-side photo comparisons went viral. Armchair analysts broke down facial features like forensic scientists. Timelines were constructed, destroyed, reconstructed. And through it all, Charlie said nothing. His silence wasn't strategic. It was paralyzing. Candace broke that silence with a second appearance. Calm. Controlled. Almost cold. In this dramatized telling, she didn't add new accusations. She didn't release documents. She simply said she was done protecting people who lied to her. That sentence did more damage than any leak ever could. Because it reframed everything. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a betrayal. And then came the twist nobody saw coming. A post from an account claiming direct knowledge of how all of this started. It didn't mention DNA. It didn't mention Candace. It said the tests were never the beginning. They were the reaction. The internet froze. Because if that was true, then something happened before any lab was contacted. Something intentional. Something designed to plant doubt. Within hours, a journalist dropped a report alleging Charlie had hired a private investigator months earlier. Not to follow his wife, but to trace the origin of a message he received that shook him to his core. According to this fictionalized account, that message contained a photo. Cropped. Timed. Sent anonymously. Enough to make any man question everything without actually proving anything at all. This detail flipped the narrative on its head. Suddenly, Charlie didn't look like a man searching for answers. He looked like a man responding to an attack. And the question shifted from what did the tests reveal, to who wanted him to take them. Political rivals backed off slightly, unsure if they'd misread the target. Allies panicked, realizing they might be standing in the middle of something engineered. And just when the chaos seemed impossible to escalate further, Candace posted something that chilled even her supporters. "When the full truth comes out, even I'll be shocked." That single line reignited everything. Because if Candace, who had already cracked the door open, believed there was something worse behind it, then the DNA scandal wasn't the bomb. It was the smoke. The final blow in this chapter came from the one person everyone had been watching silently. Charlie's wife. No long statement. No tears. Just 8 words posted without context. "I will speak when the time is right." In this dramatized narrative, those words hit harder than any accusation. Because they implied restraint, control, and knowledge. At that moment, the public realized they weren't watching a scandal unfold. They were watching a trap close. And whoever set it wasn't done yet. When it seemed like there was nothing left to uncover, the story took a turn so sharp it rewrote everything that came before it. In this fictionalized dramatization inspired by online speculation, the silence was broken by the one voice nobody had been tracking. Not a commentator. Not a rival. Not a burner account chasing clout. It came from the private investigator himself, the shadow Charlie had hired long before the internet ever caught a scent of blood. At an hour when most people were asleep, a quiet message landed in the inbox of a mid-tier journalist. No press release. No theatrics. Just a sentence that detonated everything. "Charlie didn't hire me to investigate his marriage. He hired me to trace the message that made him doubt his reality." That single line flipped the narrative so violently that even the most aggressive critics froze. Because if that was true, then the DNA tests weren't the origin of the scandal. They were a symptom. According to this dramatized account, the investigator claimed Charlie received an anonymous message months earlier. It wasn't long. It wasn't explicit. It didn't accuse anyone directly. It showed a photo. A child. A man's hand. And one unmistakable detail that wasn't accidental. A distinctive ring. Cropped just enough to provoke panic without proving anything. The timestamp placed it at a moment that couldn't be easily dismissed. And the caption beneath it read like a psychological weapon. "Check the truth for yourself." That message didn't tell Charlie what to believe. It told him to question everything. And it worked. Because doubt doesn't need evidence. It needs implication. And once that seed was planted, every memory became suspect. Every reassurance felt rehearsed. Every explanation felt incomplete. The investigator's role, according to this story, wasn't to spy on a spouse. It was to answer a single question. Who sent the photo? When the journalist published that detail, the internet went into forensic mode. People stopped arguing about DNA percentages and started hunting for the ring. Old photos. Event footage. Group shots from years ago. And within hours, the crowd reached a terrifying consensus. The ring belonged to someone in the inner circle. A mutual friend. Close to Charlie. Close to Candace. Trusted enough to be in the home. Trusted enough to be around the kids. Trusted enough to never be suspected. The reaction was instant and brutal. That person's social media went dark. Comments were disabled. Old posts vanished. Silence replaced casual engagement. And that silence felt louder than any denial. Commentators scrambled to update their narratives. Some deleted videos. Others went live to say they'd gotten it wrong. Because if a trusted friend planted the doubt, then the entire scandal looked less like a family implosion and more like a calculated psychological takedown. But the speculation exploded again, but this time it felt different. Less chaotic. More fearful. Because now the question wasn't who failed or who lied. It was who orchestrated the entire collapse. Political rivals went quiet. Influencers hesitated. Even Candace, who had lit the initial match, stopped posting entirely. Her silence wasn't retreat. It felt like calculation. Insiders in this fictional narrative claim she was blindsided by the implication that someone close to her might have played a role in triggering the chain reaction. That what began as her exposing a secret may have intersected with a much darker plan she didn't see coming. And the fact that she hasn't denied that possibility has only fueled the fire. Behind the scenes, according to these dramatized leaks, Charlie has withdrawn completely. Meetings cancelled. Appearances postponed. Statements delayed indefinitely. People around him describe a man less angry than hollowed out. Not fighting the internet, but trying to reconstruct reality from pieces that no longer fit together. Because when doubt is manufactured by someone you trust, the damage doesn't end when the truth surfaces. It lingers. The internet now waits for one thing. The identity of the blurred figure. The final player. The person who hasn't reacted, hasn't denied, hasn't explained, and hasn't been exposed. Because until that person steps forward, nothing in this story is resolved. The DNA tests. The leaks. The betrayals. They're all chapters of a larger design that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. And according to multiple insiders within this fictionalized account, the next reveal won't come from Candace. It won't come from Charlie. It won't come from a burner account chasing attention. It will come from the person who has stayed invisible long enough to let everyone else destroy each other first. And when that happens, everything people think they understand about this saga will collapse all over again. If you've made it this far, then you already understand something most people don't yet. This story is not finished, and walking away now means missing the moment everything finally snaps into place. What you just heard isn't a recap. It's a warning. Because every major turn in this saga happened when people thought the chaos had peaked, and every time, they were wrong. The next leak, the next name, the next reveal is always the one that changes the entire narrative, and it always drops when people least expect it. This is the kind of unfolding drama where being late means being confused, where missing one update means you're already behind the truth. So don't scroll away and assume you'll catch up later. Later is when the damage is already done. If you have thoughts, theories, suspicions, or even a gut feeling about who's really pulling the strings, put it in the comments now. The comment section isn't just reacting to the story anymore, it's actively shaping where this goes next. Hit like, because it tells the algorithm this story matters, and forces the next chapter into more feeds. Subscribe, because the moment new information surfaces, this channel will break it down immediately, without filters, without delays, without pretending this is smaller than it is. And turn on notifications, because silence is never random in stories like this. When someone finally speaks, it will be sudden, explosive, and impossible to ignore. This isn't closure. This is the calm before the most dangerous reveal yet. Stay ready.